Freedom. These young Berliners cried out for it a few years ago. Today, protest. A squatters' camp in the rubble of the Berlin Wall. Their world torn apart. Freedom wasn't meant to be like this. A common reaction in the West to such disorder is to ask, can't the world be organized to prevent this happening? What does this freedom really mean? Friedrich von Hayek grew up in a world that was also to be torn apart. Austria and Hungary shared a great empire. Vienna, where Hayek was born, was a centre of learning, abuzz with intellectual and artistic inquiry. But 19th century empires and their privileges were torn apart by the Great War. Hayek was sent to the Italian front. It was a miserable time for a bookish boy. On his return, Hayek chose to study law and economics. The collapse of the empire had kindled an interest in issues of society. Then, as now, the coffee houses of Vienna were meeting places for more than idle chatter. After the Great War, they hosted students actively encouraged to take part in broad intellectual debate. Hayek was fascinated by psychology and dabbled in anatomy, biology and botany. He also loved theatre, music and dancing. As a boy, Hayek had been steeped in a scholarly community where ideas were part of everyday life. His family's academic interests were in the natural sciences, but Hayek's real interest continued to move to social science. Like young people in any age, Hayek was anxious that society's problems might be solved. Hayek had returned home to find a new nation, Austria alone, in the process of inventing itself. There was a new parliament. Laws, governance and finances were being rebuilt from the remnants of the imperial past. One of the architects of the new nation was Ludwig von Mises, a brilliant technical and theoretical economist. Von Mises invited Hayek to work with them at the Chamber of Commerce in Vienna. Through a series of private seminars held here, Hayek was introduced to a unique intellectual heritage, classical liberalism. Ideas rooted in the 18th century Scottish Enlightenment, ideas which concentrated on the role of the individual in society. The logic of this worldview was to become Hayek's life's work.
Social theory begins with the discovery that there exists orderly structures which are the product of the action of many men, but are not the result of human design.
A key to this insight is that knowledge in any society is scattered among many private individuals who make private plans based on private knowledge. Martin knows how to play his accordion. His partner, Helmut, knows the tunes.
Da wingal kurz und da wingal lang und da wingal mit Drucken auf der Bank und da wingal eng und da wingal weit mit den Sommertändlein, die mir freit, jo.
Making music here today involves many hidden decisions, where to sing and when and why, and all the other decisions involved in dealing with events as they happen. Herman's late again. The entertainment creates quite a stir on the street. Individual action, the classical liberals stressed, creates things greater than any one person can anticipate. It happens through voluntary cooperation in a complex world. That complexity is a reason for not planning turns on its head the common opinion that because society is complex, it must be planned. From his home, Helmut usually takes a tram into town. The knowledge of many people is coordinated to build and run a tram. And it's not only knowledge about things that's dispersed among us. Helmut has absorbed musical ideas, his teacher's skills, and the genius of composers. An array of ideas and experiences are implicit in endless chains of cooperating people, coordinating things. Can any central planner really know all that's needed to produce the hundreds of different types of sausage the Viennese eat? The classical liberals noted that no central planner can calculate everyone's individual needs and desires. Only voluntary cooperation can coordinate the dispersed knowledge of many individuals to create greater ends. The complex voluntary society of the classical liberals offered something else. Each individual in this American shopping mall has opinions, values, aspirations and motivations known only to them. It is economic choice, based on the right to own things, private property, that allows us to express these other human freedoms. By being able to choose what to buy, we're free to decide what's important to us.
Different there? You know, you have to change around or something? Oh, highlight.
This freedom is matched by private traders' freedom to sell goods made by private suppliers. But what if the book is of a sensitive political nature? How long would freedom of expression last if paper and ink were monopolized by the state? Buying Jewish history books is allowed here, but they would have been banned in Soviet Russia. Such freedoms do not, says Hayek, lead to a life driven by materialism.
Economic values are less important to us than many things, precisely because in economic matters we are free to decide what to us is more or less important.
Money, said Hayek, is an instrument of freedom because it opens up an astounding range of choice to everyone. To be controlled in our economic pursuits is to be controlled both in what we can have and how we can think. Hayek was to find the world was becoming unsympathetic to these classical ideas. In the 1920s and 30s, the Russian socialist experiment was intended to ensure everyone's needs were satisfied. Central planners dreamed of a world where large-scale production would do this efficiently. The world of individualism was to be superseded by the world of the collective, and not only in Russia. The London School of Economics has always been a place of fervent discussion of new ideas. It was specifically established to research practical social concerns. Its students were to involve themselves in hard thinking about politics and society, and to have influence among intellectuals. Universities everywhere create traditions for themselves, often based on the influence of a founder or great scholar. The school at the time was dominated by the influence of Sidney and Beatrice Webb, staunch socialists committed to bettering the lot of the poor. Into this new world of design in 1929 came Friedrich Hayek. The guiding ethos of a university doesn't prevent its professors from playing a careful game of chess to achieve their own ends.
Lower than a social optimum. Where you would like to be...
An economist sympathetic to the classical tradition invited Hayek as a guest lecturer. He proved so popular that he was given a professorial chair and was to stay for 20 years. Many young academics lionized the young Austrian with his forthright views. It was an exciting time for economists. New theories were being developed, many in response to events outside the lecture room.
Shift outwards of the marginal product curve.
Just yards from the London School of Economics, a van arrives each day with food for the city's down and outs. It's an echo of a sight common in the 1930s, men queuing for work or food.
Here we go. And the next one.
Some people even echo the ideas put forward then to explain it, that it was a failure of capitalism. Through the Great Depression, thousands across the nation were unemployed. For socialists, it was a prediction come true. Capitalism was in decline, they said, paving the way for a socialist future. There was a challenge and a puzzle here for Hayek. Hayek loved England. He was to become a citizen in 1938. The English social and academic climate, as today, lacked the fervour of Germanic culture. The English seemed relaxed, undemonstrative, tolerant. Yet they were stubbornly individualist, suggesting a society steeped in the classical liberal ethos. But in fact, the academic economists of the New Age had turned to ideas quite alien to these traditions. They'd become imbued with notions of central planning. King's College in Cambridge led this change, largely through those surrounding the economist John Maynard Keynes. Hayek was to watch those who had absorbed the ideas in his lectures with relish join Keynes's circle. They were attracted by Keynes's ideas to help the nation escape the rigours of the Depression. Central to this was the publication of his general theory of employment. Hayek had reviewed unfavourably some of Keynes's earlier work. Hayek's lectures, published as Prices and Production, were then attacked by Keynes. And so began a long battle between the aristocratic Englishman and the Austrian interloper.
December 23rd, 1931. Dear Hayek, I'm sorry to be so tiresome, but what I really want to get at was the exact significance you attach to effective circulation.
December 25th. The total effective circulation, as I understand it and as I thought you understood it, is simply the total of all money payments effected.
That insight I thought you meant is just my difficulty.
Keynes was a mechanist. Economists could construct changes in society. Hayek focused on individuals and their psychology. His world was more like a sensitive and ever-changing organism. Keith Underwood is an individual with many talents. Understanding how human beings use their skills and knowledge was to absorb Hayek during the early part of his academic career. In his working life, Keith's an industrialist. Over 20 years, he's learnt all about precision alloy castings.
There's always lots of jobs you can change like that, but unfortunately, we don't get the opportunity. Now we've got the opportunity, we can at least speed these things up.
He and his brother, Brian, are just two of thousands of producers in any complex economy, and two among millions of consumers. Hayek criticised economists who used the tools of natural science to explain human events. He called this scientism. Science uses methods which are applied to physical objects, the behaviour of which is in general predictable. Engineers act with some certainty that a change in input will lead to a predictable change in output. The tools used are designed for repeatable results. The world we construct with these tools can be designed because we design the rules of the tools. But human beings, said Hayek, are less predictable. We are probably limited to recognizing only broad patterns in what we do, because we don't know the knowledge each individual has. Take Keith. He's technically proficient, useful perhaps in any central plan to develop national technological success. But Keith knows as much about which fly works with which fish as he does about machining components, and what he knows gives him desires and allows him to make choices unknown to any central planner. Keith's partner Rosemary and his daughter Beth do the gardening. Lots of ideas pass from one to the other.
Did you water it well then?
Yeah.
After you'd put it in?
Yeah. I think the flowers were a bit...
Well, don't worry, just try and take a cutting.
As outsiders, we can never know exactly what or when or how much is known. To Hayek, the real world consists of continual change. But how, he asked, does any order emerge out of this chaos of individual knowledge and desire?
And Mexicana, which is... Well, Rosie, just off fishing. Okay, bye.
Bye.
The answer lies in markets. All markets, whether in houses or cars, between nations or on the village green, are merely places where the knowledge and desires of individuals meet. Hayek's key insight is that markets allow the matching of perceived private values as they change through time. At his favourite shop, Keith takes the risk of having his idea of value tested.
Thank you. You?
Okay.
What can we do for you?
I'm just having maybe a few flies.
Peter, the owner, knows what he wants.
That's it.
Flies, that's all you're after today?
Keith, not one to be bullied, knows what he wants.
What, one or two of these bigger ones here?
Uh-huh. I'll tell you what we have got that you ought to see. I know you've got a wax waistcoat, but this, the Rolls-Royce of fly fishing jacket, you really ought to try this on. This was made for you. Come on, slip your coat off and let's have a go.
There is, says Hayek, a discovery process at work here.
Come on, sorry.
Guiding Keith and Peter's perceptions is price, the information system that provides a guide to what we might want, measured against what we actually see in the goods.
Nearly, anyway.
That's very nice. And loads of pockets for putting everything in.
Yeah.
Flies, ties,
All of it.
hooks, weights, everything.
For Peter, the price is a guide to Keith's knowledge of what he may actually want. But if it doesn't meet expectations, no cooperation is possible. That's our freedom in free markets.
I think that'll be the ones.
Those?
Yeah.
And what about the coat then, Keith? It's got to fit in there.
No. I'll think about it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'll think about it.
Okay, well I hope I haven't sold it.
Okay.
The incentive for any private supplier to find the right price after an unsuccessful sale is the prospect of loss, or the temptation of a profit for success.
Do you want any of these?
Suppliers change to meet these incentives. No central planner decided to build British garden centres.
No, I can't keep those. All the leaves fell off.
Hayek described these suppliers operating in markets as an extended order emerging spontaneously. Spontaneity in markets allows all of us to express our creativity.
Yeah, it's just...
Beth's friend Emma has just become a teenager.
But not, not too bright lipstick, but...
Who knows what unspoken ideas drive her decisions?
I've got like like the neutral colours. Or, so like...
It's because we have freely priced private markets that Emma's free to choose between one colour and another.
Well, those ones...
Price is up top, isn't it? 185.
179 those
179. What do you think then? Do you want to buy it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think I will.
Have you got one of those pink ones?
Yeah.
Competition between suppliers in free societies means they constantly test new ideas, usually coming up with different answers offered to us as choices at different prices. Central planning, said Hayek, ignores the underlying rules of prices, profits and competition, which over time adjust to meet individual consumer needs. Hayek's great criticism of socialist planners was that their view of the world was far too simple. Who were they, he would ask, to claim they knew anything about our private worlds? And how could anyone anticipate the unknown outcomes of our actions when even we don't know those?
The spontaneous collaboration of free men often creates things which are greater than their individual minds can ever fully comprehend.
In war, freedoms are lost to the national need. In a great irony, the London School of Economics, with Hayek, was evacuated in 1940 to Cambridge.
This morning. I don't mean to suggest that I hardly know anybody in Cambridge at all. Well, except you, and I thought that if anybody might be able to help me in the matter, you might be in a better position to do so than almost anybody else.
Keynes, a gentleman, offered Hayek privileges at King's College, but the ideas of those surrounding Keynes were an anathema to Hayek. From their ivory towers, a centralized plan was being forged. By retaining control of industry after the war, profits would be used to extend the work of the state into other parts of the economy. Central planning was going to produce a better life for all. Ignored and in near despair, Hayek turned to his only weapon, his pen. He wrote a book, his only one for a popular audience, a broadside describing a step-by-step process through which central planning could lead to disaster. It was to become a bestseller in both Britain and America. The Road to Serfdom. And Keynes?
28th June 1944. My dear Hayek, in my opinion, it is a grand book. Morally and philosophically, I find myself in agreement with virtually the whole of it. Turning to a few points, I should say what we want is not no planning, or even less planning. Indeed, I should say that we almost certainly want more.
This book is dedicated to the socialists of all parties.
Socialists took control of large industry because they believed they inevitably tended to become monopolies. They created state monopolies instead, but they would, they said, be under democratic control. The East German railway system, for example, was planned to ship goods efficiently around the advanced socialist state, and supporting it were the furnaces of the state steel monopoly. Hayek said such grand plans were bound to go wrong. Without prices, profits or competition, there were no signals to guide decisions about production. Political decision-making would take over. In East Germany, each plant manager defended his interests. When the foundries were evaluated in 1990, there were found to be more than 380 of them, many producing next to nothing. Hayek pointed out that the reaction would not be to drop the plan, but to rework it. This too would fail, economies not being like machines, but rather complex webs of human beings with unknown desires and reactions. And the only way out for the planners, said Hayek, force the people to fit the plan. The plan would be dressed up to offer new social objectives, which sounded palatable and which no one could reasonably reject. The people's car, the Trabant, a symbol of the equality which was every worker's right to have. Berndt Trabi is a collector's piece today. The objective of the new plan, social solidarity in which the collective good was placed above private desires. It extended to everything one had, or rather was allowed to have. Take the utilitarian apartments of the communist world. Once in, you had to stay there. Berndt's friend Karen tries to do the best with what she's got. The complex served the local production units, a society in which someone else decided what was good for you.
Ein schöner Sonnentag und man hört die Kinder von draußen. Hast du auch eine Kindertagesstätte im Hinterhof?
Nee.
State schools, shops and entertainment. With everything controlled, money became tokens, taking with it any freedom of choice, except to choose not to work too hard and try to forget the oppressive atmosphere.
Das ist recht laut tagsüber.
Vodka, 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 hey, vodka, večna družba.
As the debris of communism is sold off, the reality of planning controls has emerged. In a key chapter of The Road to Serfdom, Hayek describes why the worst get on top. The plan, he says, becomes self-serving. There's too much to lose. Herr Koch worked for the Stasi, a vast network of secret police and informers.
Wo alle zur gleichen Zeit das gleiche gut oder schön oder nicht gut empfinden sollten. Also eine Uniformierung der Gedanken- und der Gefühlswelt. Ist in der DDR damals mit Hilfe von Gesetzen und Vorschriften ein Polizei- und ein Staatssicherheitsapparat aufgebaut worden, um alle Angriffe gegen diese sozialistische Gesellschaft im Keime zu ersticken, sie bei Zeiten zu erkennen und dann, wenn nötig, sie zu zerschlagen. Wo viele kleine Mosaiksteine zusammengelegt wurden, denn jeder IM hat ein ganz kleines Informationchen gegeben, aber indem man es zusammensetzte, ist ein großes Bild daraus geworden und somit eine flächendeckende Überwachung für die gesamte Bevölkerung der DDR zustande gekommen. Und je mehr dieses Land DDR wirtschaftlich nicht in der Lage war, als Land zu existieren, umso größer wurde der Repressions-, Unterdrückungs- und Überwachungsapparat, um alle, die etwas dagegen unternehmen, frühzeitig zu erkennen und sie dann aus dem Verkehr zu ziehen.
As we rummage to find something good in the debris of the plan, Hayek asks us to remember it's evil.
Once you admit that the individual is merely a means to serve the ends of the higher entity called society, most of those features of those totalitarian regimes which horrify us follow of necessity.
In the West, we tend to take our freedoms for granted. Hayek did not claim that central planning would inevitably lead to serfdom, but he stressed that if the foundations of the free society were ignored, then over time the freedom of each generation would be eroded. Is the process described in The Road to Serfdom relevant, for example, in the United States today? Only a few minutes' walk from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. is a planning agency. It controls production using a common method, licenses. These pink slips are the permissions which allow free individuals in a free country to run a business under central control. Among the businesses are hair salons. Kim is a customer of a licensed hair salon, but to get the license, the owners had to fight against the licensing board and in the courts for 9 years. Pamela Farrell wanted to specialise in hair braiding. The licensing board said that she had, by law, to take exams in old-fashioned techniques of no interest to her. She fought them, and eventually the law was changed. But how much control did the bureaucratic planners retain?
Can you explain the new law to me sort of succinctly so I won't have to read the whole thing?
All right, well, the new cosmetology law is the result of a long process.
The control plan for hair salons was adjusted to include new licenses for hair braiders.
Let me ask you, how is this new law going to protect the public?
The manner in which the public will be protected is the same as it was in the old law. The specifics will be somewhat different.
Pamela has every incentive not to hurt her customers. They wouldn't come back if she did. But bureaucracy, Hayek said, is blind. Its incentive is to avoid risk prior to any bad practice emerging. Control of hair braiding has been retained.
What are the issues, and can we feel, James, for example, that if the general public goes into a braiding shop, for example, and there is some minor scalp disease, that whomever is licensed there will be able to do proper referrals to the dermatologist, for example?
Yes. According to the regulations now under development, they will have to have the training just like a cosmetologist to recognize scalp disease and hair disorders. In terms of the public being protected, we have as much control over the braiders and electrologists as we did under the old law for cosmetologists.
I've got the file here with the cosmetologist.
Planners, as Hayek pointed out, can always find new objectives to justify their plan. No one is saying that planners have bad motives. They're often good, but the process in which they're involved, Hayek tells us, turns good motives into bad ends. Where the state controls activities, these controls grow.
The testing procedures. There's a license now for a hair braider, a salon, a manager, a training academy, and an instructor. So there are now 5 separate licenses, which covers everything that we ask for.
The licensing board has recently invited Pamela Farrell to join them. She's insistent that she will limit her support for regulation to matters of public safety.
Of course, we would be issuing license and doing the state board exams.
But what temptations are there, Hayek would ask, for someone less scrupulous than her to use this power to prevent new competition? The dangers to freedom once the process of control described in Hayek's Road to Serfdom is set in motion are all too obvious. Hayek's great contribution has been to remind us to remember the foundations of our freedoms.
Is there a greater tragedy imaginable than that in our endeavor consciously to shape our future in accordance with high ideals, we should in fact unwittingly produce the very opposite of what we have been striving for?